So welcome everyone. It is good to be together and hard to have to be together for the reason we are together. But we have lots of concerns and lots of questions. And so we wanted to be able to invite people to gather together so that we can share information for everyone at the same time, so that you can identify your questions. And by virtue of simply being on screens together, we know that we're not alone. And we support each other and care for each other by our presence with each other tonight. I'm Karen Helfman-Milson. I'm part of the regional council staff. I support communities of faith, and another responsibility is animation of networks and clusters. And so as we network together in the midst of this pandemic, I've been all staff is doing different aspects of our work, and I've been part of calling people together to be in community, as that's part of my responsibility. We have other staff people here tonight. We have Susie Henderson, we have Dale Hildebrandt, Jody Maltby. You'll have an opportunity to meet them. We're going to have Eric Matheson with us from General Counsel, who's our financial officer from General Counsel, and I believe we're going to have David Leighton Brown, our president. He hopes to be here with us tonight, so we'll have the opportunity to be with him as well. So as we gather in this time when anxiety is rising around our world, when we hold concern for many people who we know and love and many people we do not know and love, when we are particularly aware of those who are most vulnerable, living on the street or in places of poverty or somewhere out around the world where they cannot get home. We hold all of our Earth family in our prayers on this night as we gather together. And we think of all of our communities of faith throughout Shining Waters Regional Council, and how in every place each one of us is making decisions, and the gift of being able to weave our connection together to create a tapestry of support for one another so that we know we're not alone by virtue of being in community. And so on this night we create a sense of a circle. Although we are in the squares together, here on the screen, I invite us to enter into awareness of being as though we are in a circle. And in a circle, what happens to our energy is we connect one to another all the way around the circle. And so feel your heart energy spread out and connect to each other around the circle and hold each other in care, and each community that is represented here. And then I invite us to allow our heart energy to enter into the center of the circle. And in the center of the circle, we normally have a light lit that we gather around. That's the Christ candle that reminds us of the light of love that's deep within each one of us. And we often have the candle burning that's the rainbow candle that reminds us that we are all welcomed in this community. And we often have the candle of the four directions that reminds us of our relationship and commitment to be in healthy relationship with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. And so as we gather on this night, we acknowledge that we are gathering on the land where our ancestors from off of this continent were welcomed hundreds of years ago to come and live here in peace and harmony and to work together and to share the resources of this place. And we acknowledge that we have many broken relationships as that arrival and years beyond it have unfolded. And so in this time of a pandemic, as we remember that we are all upheld by love, we allow our commitment to reawaken and to strengthen, to build relationships that honor one another and all who walk in our sphere and beyond, that together we may create the kind of world of support and well-being for all. And so we come this night, gathering in the name of the one who calls us into living holy lives, lives filled with wholeness, lives filled with a commitment to the well-being of community. Welcome. At 7:30, Eric Matheson is going to arrive, and we're going to handle that as being like an order of the day, which means wherever we are at 7:30, we will stop and we'll move to Eric for him to share with us the updates of no firm decisions, but at least the conversations that are going on. We have found that if people know that other people are working on concerns that they have, there is an incredible decrease of anxiety because they know they're not alone in this and that people are aware of what the issues are for them, and we're seeking responses. We will also be dealing with offering information on the website. Susie Henderson and others, lots of folks have been working on developing phenomenal information there on the website for you, and we want it to become your newest best friend for getting informations and updates and what's going on. So she's going to take you through a look at what's there. Jody Maltby, our lead staff, is going to be giving you an update on financial information and on around questions about governance and how do we meet legally, how do you do an email vote. We want to talk at some point about Zoom. We're getting lots of conversations going about how do we use Zoom to be able to connect to each other in this time of isolation, and talk about opportunities about gathering. There's lots of worship opportunities and things that are happening. Before we complete our hour, we want to decide whether or not we want to meet again, if this was helpful to do, should we meet again, and where you'll find the information from this meeting. And at the very end, we will be inviting David Leighton Brown, our president, to close us in a time of prayer. So I want to call upon Dale Hildebrand at this time to share with us information about employment questions.
Thank you, Karen. And it's great to see everybody. I don't know if I've ever seen so many faces in one place who have talked to on the phone over the last 6 years actually. So it's quite amazing to see all the familiar names. And I know I've spoken with many of you and talked with many of you and had meetings with many of you. So I know that a lot of you are M&P chairs, others are on the board or governing body. And I have had lots of questions about employment. I won't be giving you all the answers tonight, and also recognizing that each community of faith has unique circumstances. So I'm going to be giving some guidance and advice tonight, and in other cases I'll be letting you know what some of the polity is around some of the decisions that we have to make, both in terms of provincial legislation and also our own policies as United Church. I do recognize that in this time of anxiety, including job security, that I mean, these are financial issues. As donations perhaps decrease, as rent decreases, for those of you who have rentals, you're feeling the financial crunch, and staff are often the bulk of a congregation's expenses. I guess the first thing I want to say is that these first few days of the crisis are not times to make hasty decisions. We recognize that we're talking about people's livelihoods here. I know we're also talking about the sustainability of your communities of faith and wanting to come out the other side of this. So these are the things that we have to hold in balance. But I would hope that people would not be making hasty decisions. We're going to have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, a plan E, a plan F, but we don't want to jump to plan F without exploring A, B, C, D, E, and E. So let's think about that. And I guess the first thing I would say is, if at all possible financially, continue to keep your employees on the payroll and avoid layoffs. If this is certainly the time to draw on reserves, if you have reserves, If you have a line of credit, consider using that rather than investments, which, as we all know, have significantly diminished in value in this crisis. Let me just run through a few points and scenarios. Obviously, if you have employees who are able to work at home, work with them to set up arrangements. It might mean modifying work assignments, that sort of thing. We know that during this time, many people are working at home. I also realize that probably most, if not, well, I wouldn't say all, but the majority of our church buildings are likely closed. And so for employees such as custodians and others who can't work from home, let's think about the following options, okay? The first one is to use up any lieu time that may have been accrued, if that's a system that your employees use. So obviously now would be a good time if they're unable to work to use their lieu time. If you can provide a paid leave of absence for a specified period to be reviewed at the end of the period, that's certainly within your rights as employers. I know that some folks are going to have to consider laying off employees, and there will be a template letter for how to do that in order to comply with Ontario employment law. A template letter is being drawn up by the folks at General Counsel Office, and that will be available in the next day or two. Again, hope you don't have to go there quickly without looking at other options, but we realize that the reality is that some communities of faith are going to have to do that. I want to be clear that the laying off of employees, it needs to be approved by your governing body. It's not a decision for a single person, and it's not even a decision for the M&P committee to make. They can make the recommendation, but those decisions of laying off staff need to be done by your governing body, and Jody is going to go over how we can continue to meet during these times when we're not able to meet in person. I also want to say that in times of crisis, our ministry personnel are needed more than ever. And so they are going to continue to do much of the work that they have done via the phone and other electronic means. During times of crisis is not the time to think about reducing the hours of your ministry personnel or laying off your ministry personnel. We need to prioritize our ministers. And so I want to emphasize that. If you do need to, if you are thinking about reducing the hours of your ministry personnel, please speak with me or Todd. Todd is, so I'm the Pastoral Relations Minister for south of the 407. Todd is Pastoral Relations Minister for north of the 407. He'll be back early next week. So please speak with one of us before you think, or before you make any moves to reduce the hours of your ministry personnel, because there is a process that needs to be gone through. That process may be modified. It's not modified yet, but we'll see. We'll keep you posted. The bottom line is be in touch with us. We are also looking into the feasibility of keeping employees who are laid off on the benefits plan. It's already difficult enough in these times to be losing that income, but to be losing the non-monetary aspects of your job. The benefits plan is also a blow, and so I know that General Counsel staff are looking at what might be done even if employees are laid off to keep them on the benefits plan. And so we'll have more information about that quite soon. We will also be providing you some guidance on ensuring that laid off employees can transition to employment insurance. And so there will be some information coming out about that very shortly as well. If you have staff who are independent contractors, so that is They're not legally employees of the church. They are self-employed. They invoice you. They're not employees of the church. So for example, a cleaning service or something like that, you can temporarily suspend their services. You don't need to go through the same rules around employees, but you need to check your written contract with those folks. What have you said in your written contract about ending services? Okay. If you cannot continue to pay all or some of your staff due to an immediate financial difficulty, so you've looked at your reserves, you've looked at line of credit, all that kind of stuff, and we do recognize that there's some churches living right on the edge, there may be some supports available. So before you take drastic action, please talk to Jody Maltby, who's on this call, and she may say more about that. There may be some support available from Shining Waters Regional Council. If any of your staff become sick, and we certainly hope that they won't, particularly from the coronavirus, but if they do become sick for that reason or any other reason, they can apply for the restorative care program. And if accepted, and it's based on medical evidence, the community of faith will be reimbursed for 85% of their salary after a 2-week waiting period. You can contact Todd or myself for an application, and it's a fairly simple application. Even if there's not an immediate doctor's note to go with it, it can be submitted, and the doctor's note can come later. So that restorative care program is for all employees who are 14 hours a week or more, part of our pension and benefits plan. And that is there if employees become ill for any reason. Okay. I also want to remind folks that our benefits provider, or one of our benefits provider, Morneau Chappelle, does have an employee family assistance program, again, available for all employees who are on the pension and benefits plan. And Morneau Chappelle provides all sorts of counseling support. They have actually come out with a emotional well-being video that they have just done. We recognize that many people are extremely anxious during this time, are feeling very emotional, are having difficulty coping with the anxiety, and this video addresses that, and about how to talk to your children about it, tips for your family, and that sort of thing. And so, yes, I will cut and paste that link into the chat box, and we will also make all these resources available that we're talking about today on our website. So I think that sort of covers the main things. As we all know, each day brings new information, new challenges. This is what we have as of today. Those things that have been promised to us by General Counsel Office, some of the templates and that sort of thing, will be posted to the Shining Waters website as well. And so we will make sure that that all of you as lay leaders have that available to you. So
Dale, there was a question about honorariums for folks like Minister of Music and Administrator. Did you speak to that?
I didn't. Honorariums, that honorariums go to volunteers. That wouldn't be an employee then. You know, I mean, I would think that would be low down in your list as you triage your finances and think about who you're able to continue to pay. Yeah, that would apply to volunteers, and those wouldn't be employees. Any other questions in the chat box around employment issues?
Those were the only ones I saw, as lots of questions came up and you just kept answering them. Way to go,
Okay.
Dale.
Yeah, I didn't even know that.
No, you were. I knew what your list was too, so I knew they would come up.
Okay. Yeah,
So
and just again, Todd and I are resource people to M&P committees, and so if you have any questions about either your minister or your lay employees that haven't been covered here today, or new questions that come up, feel free to be in touch with us. I'll put my contact information in the chat box as well, and it's on our website.
So just to let you know, so you do know, we are recording this first part where we present information. So this will be available. We are also, everybody can take the chat information. Everybody can take the chat information at the end. We'll show you how to do that. Don't leave without me making sure we explain that to you. And we will put together a sheet of information coming out of this meeting. We've already gathered a fair bit of it for other groups already, for some of the ministers who met earlier in the week. We will do the same with this information and make sure that it's available for you on the website. So you'll want to keep going back to our website continuously to be checking out this information to make sure it's there. And you can imagine there's lots of inundation. We want to be here and support you. You're going to hear later about the fact that we're going to make ourselves available on Zoom for an hour a day as a staff to try to answer your questions. You'll get all that information, but it will be available to you, and we are around, and you'll find a wealth of information on the website. Thank you, Dale, for your information on that.
Yeah, and I just cut and paste the overview of that Morneau Chapelle video and the link to it in the chat box, and that'll also be on our website.
Thank you. Eric has arrived, and so I am going to I am also going to do a little bit of teaching. I forgot to do this piece just before Eric speaks, in case you want to really be able to see him. On the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom screen, there is a little area that shows, gives some option. It can say speaker view or gallery view. If it says speaker view and you want to be able to see Eric speak and just predominantly see Eric, if you click onto speaker view. If it says gallery view, so you can switch it so you can just see the person who's speaking as the major person. Some of you might already be on that, but so that you know, top right hand of the screen for that, to change it so you can see it more clearly. So Eric, I'm hoping your mic, if you can open your mic and come on screen and share with us the updates of the things that are being looked at from a financial perspective at General Council. And so that folks know there's no definitive answers. Eric doesn't have all the answers to come here tonight, but we have heard people say, so long as we know people are working on this, we feel better. So we thought it would be good for you to hear from Eric. So over to you, Eric. Thank you for being here.
Okay. Good evening, folks. Yeah, definitely not a lot of immediate answers right now. And in fact, if anyone wants to see me full screen, you probably should change your setting. But I'm going to just give you a sense of some of the things going on. Some things I can say for sure, but I think we all know just how fast things are changing in terms of government announcements and just how much has changed, even in terms of what services are open and for the public, let alone worship being closed down, across the country. So we're exploring every option right now, doing a lot of research, and I'll start with the fact that it's all about congregations in terms of revenue for the whole church system. Over 80% of the revenue for the broader church comes from congregations, and if congregations are struggling, so are we. And just to give you an example, right now, all the funding that goes out for M&S grants, mission and service grants, or for that matter, the assessment money that's distributed across the country, all of that is out there being spent right now, and it hasn't come in yet. So, from a cash flow point of view, we're feeling considerable pressure. I'm doing a number of things to try to respond to that. We also, anyone who has investments all our investments are way down. Depends on your asset mix and so on, but it wouldn't be unusual to be down 10, 15, or 20%. And so it's an awful time to be cashing investments too, if you're planning to perhaps do that for cash flow purposes. So I have, at the General Counsel office, I'm talking to our bankers about having a very significant line of credit, because I would rather pay interest in the short term and have more money available to support the broader church. If we cash in investments right now to do that, we're crystallizing losses and that we'll never get back. So that's one of the things we're doing. We are talking about the possibility of some form of fundraising campaign in response to COVID-19. I personally don't support that. We'll see where it lands. One person's opinion isn't how the United Church makes decisions, but I think right now, the focus needs to be let's support our congregations directly. If you're exhorting your membership to support you, let's support our local outreach ministries, and having the national, having some kind of national campaign may not make a lot of sense at this time, and we're still debating that one. There are a few things we can do though, and we are already we're talking about the possibility of some form of a loan program to support congregations for cash flow purposes. We already have some capacity. We have an early alert system. If a congregation doesn't make payroll, or there isn't enough money in a bank account, our current system calls for us to ADP, first of all, honors the payroll, and we then move to, we have 3 days basically to make ADP whole. And we're talking about the possibility of a loan program to help with that. We're exploring what other kinds of savings there might be. But it's tough going, because it's tough for at any level of the church. Now is the toughest time to raise cash. Our congregation members are fearful too. Their retirement savings have, if someone's retirement is imminent, they're looking at a lot smaller numbers on the printout. Just in terms of high level, one of the questions we've had is about assessments. Can we defer assessments, or can we delay paying assessments? And the answer to that is that's one that's right within our control, in the sense that we're not in a position to waive assessments. That's a very significant part of funding the system. But in the short run, if folks choose to pay later in the year, or defer payment right now, that's completely understandable. And for all the congregations that pay electronically on their own schedule, or who pay in response to an invoice, they already control that. If they're on par, they can reach out to us and basically suspend the par billing for the next while. And the challenge will be how long that while is. I don't think any of us know at this point. You may know, I don't know if it's all literally announced, I think this morning, or maybe last night, was that there is some degree of small employer payroll support coming from the government, which we're hoping to take advantage of. It basically says for a 3-month period, the subsidy could be equal to 10% of the wages paid to an employee, and it's up to, it's small business, it applies to charities, and it can even be administered by adjusting the amount of income tax drawn. So there are some government policies coming. There's expedited EI coming. There's all kinds of things. But in terms of what we can do ourselves, we're envisioning completely relaxing any planned assessment payment schedule. We're looking hard at seeing if we can raise cash in different ways to fund a loan program to provide interim payroll support. To date, we haven't said the same thing about M&S. Frankly, lots of congregations are, time their M&S submissions around their cash flow needs. I expect we'll see more of that. It's technically I can't advocate for that because it's technically offside. It's technically a breach of, trust fund management. But we'll probably see lots of it anyway. It is going to be a challenge. So, again, I don't have anything specific other than to the extent we certainly hope that the whole system, we can find ways to keep people actively on the payroll because it's different. It's not Sunday morning worship, but if anything, our communities need pastoral care and support more than almost any other time. So I'm going to stop there for just a second and ask if there are any questions or suggestions that people might have or any ideas that I haven't mentioned.
So we're going to invite you to type anything into the chat box, if you would, please. We've seen a comment from Mark Walker. I'm going to guess it says Mark W. I think there will be more people than we think who will be willing to support their congregation, and we've certainly heard that from lots of folks. If still with anxiousness, but we have heard that. One of the things we've heard certainly is that you actually have to ask them because people give when you ask them. But type in any questions that you have for Eric. It's unusual to have the chance to have him here. We're going to ask Jody to speak a little bit more about finances in a moment. But so Betsy, did you see that there, Eric?
Yeah, no, I'm very comfortable with the chat box. First of all, I want to say more than anything else, I hope Mark Walker is right. And I think there will be pockets of the country where that's true, where that is the case. I'm also seeing some pockets in the country where folks are moving rather abruptly to more draconian action too. But I certainly hope Mark's right. What about the option of keeping people on the benefit plan even if laid off? Well, certainly we are looking at that. That's the whole notion of that would basically need to be funded from the benefit plan reserve, which is currently under some pressure. But I do know that Alan Hall and the HR team, I know, in fact, have a meeting tomorrow to be exploring that with the insurer and talking about how that could work. But in all of these cases, the challenge is going to be there isn't a magic answer to some of these things, but certainly that option is being considered. Suggestions on how to contact people when the church is closed for the next few weeks. Well, we're trying. I'll only answer that from the national perspective. We are having people work from home. If you phone their extensions or send their emails, we are trying to do, as close as anybody can do to business as usual right now. I mean, that's not possible, but they are available. Will there be tech support on how to stream services? I don't know if you've talked about that already, but I think there are, is it Canadian Shield that might have some stuff up with George Bott and all of that kind of thing?
Susie's going to speak to that later in the meeting. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll take care of that, or Susie can. Yeah, we're all going as fast as we can. We are looking to implement a Donate Now button on the streaming site. Somebody says that. The easiest and fastest way to do that, and there's a webinar on the United in Learning site on this, is Canada Helps. And if anyone needs help with that, we can connect you and have someone talk you through it very quickly. Again, I'm seeing comments, some information sharing on what people are doing.
Okay, so does anybody else have a particular question for Eric at this point? I mean, we're hoping, Eric, that if you can stay for a few minutes, because Jody's going to be speaking about finances, you might
absolutely.
have...
As long as you need, or you could also evict me at any time.
You're welcome to stay. We're planning on only being here till 8, but you're welcome to stay. Thank you for the reflections on hearing what people are doing. Jody, I'm going to come over to you next around the information you have about the financial conversations we've all been having.
Thanks. So what I wanted to talk about, first of all, echoing what Eric has been saying and what others have been saying, is our first point of contact is definitely to make sure that our congregants know that we still need them to make donations and to facilitate ways to do that. And I understand that our stewardship staff are working on some resources for us, but it can be as simple as sending out an email to your congregants and say, be sure you know you can make a donation on Canada Helps, or you can send a check. And if you are someone who is able, consider making a one-time extra donation, because if we don't tell people, they really don't know. So some of the things that we're doing regionally to try and offer some support, like the General Council, we're looking for sources of funds that we can make available as short-term support to help with payroll issues. And so our executive is meeting beginning of next week to make some decisions on some funds that we hope we can have available. And also, we're in the process of creating some greater flexibility around being able to access our restricted funds. Our policy now has been that we can approve one-time use up to $25,000 of restricted funds from property, sale of property, or from sale of a manse for specific purposes under the policy. And so we're trying to get greater flexibility so that we can approve one-time usages specifically for responding to the pandemic. So that's one of the pieces that we're looking at. And so I just would really encourage you, if you are not able locally to source the support that you need, to please be in touch with me to talk about options that are available to you. I thought Eric's comment about the line of credit was particularly helpful as well. And I just think we need to all be in this together. And so we're looking for all the options that we have to make sure that we can keep everybody on payroll and keep all our churches, get ourselves all through this. So oh, the only other thing, just because a couple of things that we had, if your congregation currently has a loan or a mortgage with Toronto United Church Council, I've had a few people ask me about that, and I'm suggesting that you contact them directly to see if there are options around payments. And one of the things that I picked up on from one of the emails that came out from General Counsel that I like to lift up is about making sure you have more than one authorized ADP representative who can instruct ADP payroll services just in case someone gets sick. So those are the things that I really wanted to emphasize. I think first and foremost, please be in touch if you need to talk through your finances, and we'll see what we can do together.
Jody, there's a question in the chat about renters.
So yeah, and that's, I mean, that's part of the reason why we are concerned, because If you are a congregation where a significant amount of your income comes from rent, chances are you've had to close your building to your renters, and that's where we may need to look at other options to help us get through, because we can't really be charging our tenants when they can't access our buildings, and we shouldn't be having them in using the buildings any more than we should be. So I'm not sure if that was the question, and I'm not sure if Eric has other wisdom about that, but just to say, we are aware that for some congregations, that's a really significant source of income, and that's going to be a real challenge.
Yeah, it's Eric. This is the most extraordinary thing society has seen. You can talk about world wars and so on, but in terms of economic activity, in terms of societal activity, the only thing that's increased, for the foreseeable future is people walking outside. In our parks, I think that's the only thing that's active. And when it comes to renters, if rent is a significant part of the congregational budget, it's not going to be very likely that you can make that up with, you can't make it up with special events. You can't make it up. You really can't be asking your givers to increase at that scale when they're under pressure too. So I hate to say this, but we should all be hoping and praying that Marg Walker is right.
Eric, do you see the question there about, are we allowed to purchase airtime for television broadcast for fundraising?
Well, I guess there's a cost to that. So if there's someone, we could certainly, if you're thinking, can the national church do that? It isn't something that we've found to be effective, but it could work if it's relatively cost effective, say, to do on a community channel or something. I don't even know what permissions. I think the overall philosophy right now needs to be do what you need to do, and feel free to experiment if there's something that you think could work. But I don't see it at a sort of like on a network TV level anymore. But it could, if someone thinks it could work on a community channel, I'd say knock yourself out.
Thank you for that. Jody, Susie, are you seeing anything else around finances in particular? I'm not either. Okay, Jody, we're going to invite you. We want to get to Zoom and to the website, but we're going to invite you just to talk briefly about the two governance questions that have been raised.
Sorry, were there two raised in the chat box?
Not in the chat box, just
okay.
Staff.
Okay, yes. So two of the things that I was going to lift up, there was a question around being able to give notice if you're needing to have a congregational meeting, and that could be particularly if like there were some congregations who were in the process of presenting a new call or appointment, or if as Dale was talking about, you found yourself needing to change your hours for ministry personnel, or depending on how long this goes on, there may be other things, and our manual process is to give notice during worship, which is fine if you're live streaming worship, but if you're not, then we needed to find another way to be able to give notice, and so we did get a legal opinion on being able to use email and or Canada Post and or the phone. But I think what I'm going to do, Karen, if folks are okay with it, it's fairly straightforward information that I think I can provide in writing. So just to flag that we have that to offer to you, so that if you are needing to have a congregational meeting, we have instructions on how you can do that notice piece. And the other piece is, just to remind everyone, we can meet by phone, we can meet by video conference, and we can make most decisions by email now, and there's a very specific process for using email. And again, I think I can give that information out in writing, and so we don't need to put a lot of time into it. I just want to flag that. And again, to say if folks are challenged in figuring out how to meet together any of the requirements within the manual, please be in touch with me and we'll figure it out together.
And the questions raised, how can we meet? Certainly as Susie starts to speak, and we'll make sure we get to it in the end, is the option of conference calls, and we'll tell you how we can help you do that, and Zoom. So
and if it's Eric, I'll just jump in. We'll have, I mean, this is really fast moving. I saw the draft response for this today as it went through the legal department. So we'll have a number of these things up as FAQ type, or I'm sorry, frequently asked questions on the COVID-19 webpage. We're envisioning, there's all kinds of questions around insurance, there's questions around meeting, financing, all kinds of things. And we'll try to have detailed suggestions and comments for each of those.
Thank you for that. And we've got lots of information about worship. I'm going to pass it over to Susie so she can show you where you can go to find this information and what you might find there. Susie.
Thanks, Karen. I just want to share my screen with you briefly. So, sorry if the people on the phone, I've typed the address in the chat and will share this information also afterwards. But I wanted just to give you a look at where we're hoping home base for you is during this time, which is, this is the front page of our website, and we put our button right on the front, which will take you to our page that we're really building on a daily basis. So in response to questions and things that we're hearing, we'll create more categories in here and just make this one solid landing page that, and I'll let you look at it on your own if you haven't seen it already, but let me just point you into the broad categories of what's here. I'm trying to keep this section at the top, the quick links for you. So the link to the United Church kind of key documents, and then some of the key health websites. And then across the top, we'll try and keep our highlighted things that we want to share with you, including this one on the Worship Online Tools and Tips with George Bott, which is a recording of the workshop that he did earlier this week to just share his setup about how he's using both Zoom and YouTube to do live streaming. And he just goes through it step by step there. So you can watch that along. And he's also willing to help and talk with people. I don't know if he's going to get flooded with too many requests, but he certainly is willing to help. So he's one of our resource people. Jody's contact information is up top there as the first point of contact for communities of faith. And then we're trying to collect for you both resources for online worship. So these are places where there is content and information related to hymns in the public domain, licensing, those kinds of things, as well as some content, the copyright guide for congregations. And then some of the churches in our region that are providing online services, and I've tried to indicate what type of online service they're doing, so that if this feels like that it's something really beyond what you can make happen, really give yourself permission to figure out as a community how you'd like to do something different, or even just to participate somewhere else. And some churches have decided to do that together. But so some folks are kind of rising to the challenge and trying to create something on their own, and others are doing other things. One of the most popular things, I think, is to take in the online worship with the moderator, which is just starting and will be available to people on Sundays. You can join in a session of Zoom on Tuesday evenings to be in the live audience for when the worship is recorded, and then that'll be available for people to either watch on Sunday or to download in advance, and we'll share a link with that, where that is going to be. I think it's probably going to be posted tomorrow. They're trying to get able to post it on Thursdays, but probably more likely it'll be available on Fridays, and then people can watch it on Sunday. And the National Church has also created a little interactive worship map where you can go to their website and just look by location. So if you want to go to church in Calgary, you know, do that. We are inviting people to add your online worship event to our website community events calendar and to identify it with the category called streaming worship. And then on the 1st of every month, we send out an automatic newsletter to every community of faith of the listings in our event calendar, which will only be online events probably for the next little while, but we welcome you to use that. After our conversation with ministers, we opened up a section for pastoral care, and we're just beginning to put resources here related to, for example, the online site for Alcoholics Anonymous and some materials for grief work and online funerals. And then at the bottom, there's a place for you to add your emergency contact. If you have somebody in your congregation who's managing the situation and should be included in our communication. Just the last thing I want to tell you is we're going to keep track of our sent emails here in this little stream called Regional Updates. So just if you don't want to sort through your email and you want a quick place to look at what's our most recent thing that has been sent out, you can also find it here on our website. I shared with you the link to our Facebook page where we're able to share more information with you and also to lift up other information that's available from, you know, examples of what churches are doing. So for example, today I was able to share a little prayer from a minister who was just offering a prayer outside in the park. So those aren't the kinds of things that we're all going to be able to record on our website, but we're able to sort of share inspiration and little bits of connection there for you. So do have a look at that if Facebook is something that you use. Do you want me to do Zoom now too, Karen, or later?
Yes, please.
Okay. So if you can keep following me on your screen. You're still with me?
Yes.
So now I'm all on our website in the section called Program and Resources. We've just created a little page for Zoom video conferencing a while back as people were starting to use it. And we will continue to add resources here. But I want to let you know that Zoom themselves, which is an American company, their website is zoom.us, has a really excellent set of supports and educational material themselves. So they've created a special support page, which we link to right at the top for the current situation, which includes a ton more information about just kind of getting online and how people are using Zoom to work at home. And these little videos here that we've linked to are just 2 or 3 of the many that they have. But this one, for example, is like less than a minute long, and it just shows people how to join a meeting. So for someone who doesn't know what you're talking about when you say Zoom, it's a nice little piece to be able to watch, and it just explains how the whole thing happens. Similarly, they have resources around scheduling a meeting or doing sort of more elaborate things. And so their materials are always available, and they're now doing multiple times a day webinars. So you can just go to their site when you're ready to figure it out and really learn a whole lot about it right there. In addition to that, we're planning to do, I think a week from today, another Zoom call that's just targeted to beginners. So kind of a follow-up from George Bott's session. I'll invite some resource people who are currently using Zoom just to come and share what they're doing, and people will be welcome just to come and ask all your questions. So we can kind of create a friendly learning environment for each other and try and bridge that gap a bit between the people who know how and the people who don't know how, and just really kind of support each other in that. I'm happy to do as much as I can to support you one-on-one in terms of getting yourself, once you have an account, if you want to have a Zoom with me or another one of our staff during that visiting time or something, and say, just show me how to do this piece again, you know, or just get a little bit more practice using it. To the degree that we can, we're happy to do that kind of backup support as you use it. And then so we also want to invite you to think creatively about how Zoom can be used. For example, there's a couple of churches who are using it to do coffee hour with moms in the neighborhood, or children's time, when they do get kids to all draw a picture of something and hold up their pictures. So there's lots of things that we can do this way that is, you know, different than what we do on our normal Sunday. So instead of just kind of taking our old container and trying to stuff it in the Zoom format, I would invite you just to think about what are some things that really work with this kind of a format, and then what are the things that we might want to leave until we kind of get back to church. For example, singing together is not a thing that works very well with Zoom, because if everyone goes on their mic, it sounds pretty scary. So there's lots of creative opportunities, and then there's also some limits there. But we're happy to try and be helpful resources to all of that experimenting. And really what's happening now is right across the board. So I would say that you know your people best, whether it's going to be an old school phone tree that's really going to be a thing that makes a difference for your people to feel cared for and connected. Or for some people, they're going to go to a text-based app like WhatsApp and say, let's go and, you know, connect with people through their cell phones, because that's really where our people are. Lots of people are doing broadcasting on Facebook Live. Some people are starting to try and be present on all those little neighborhood apps that are popping up. Like Nextdoor is one that's just kind of appeared in my neighborhood, where people are reaching out and offering to help. So there's all kinds of ways to reach out and be present. And I think you know your community best, and the tools that they are most likely to use are the tools that you want to lean into, and just give yourself permission to do that. So not to try and do them all, but just try and do one well is what I would suggest.
So one of the resources that we have available, we can't provide everybody with their Zoom account, but it is less than $20 a month. So we're hoping that your savings and gas will make that worthwhile. And only one person on the call has to have a Zoom account. Everybody else just gets a link. So we're talking $20 or less per month for you to have upwards to 300 people on a Zoom call at a time, and that's unlimited usage. Just encourage your people to make sure they call the right number so they don't get charged a long distance call, but it's all there for you. One of the resources that we realize that we can offer, we don't know that many people will take us up on it, but it's going to be announced and available on links, is we do have a conference call tool that we can make available to you. So if getting onto phones and having conversations on phones, make sure you figure out how to figure out who's going to speak next and do that well. You know, create a circle and just call upon people one at a time so they can speak, or say pass. But if you want to do it that way, because that's what's going to be most comfortable to your folks, that is a system we do have that we can help you access. Bell can, as well as other companies can too. You might want to just do it that way. That's the simplest. You have control, but we can help you do that. And there'll be information about how to do that tomorrow. Anything else, Susie, Jody, Dale, as far as communication goes? So we will be providing some of these this information up on the website as quickly as we're able to. It does take a little bit of time to bring it together and do it well, but we will be providing it and it will be available. Do continue to put your questions into the chat, because we will be saving all this, and it will help us to know what your questions are, even if we did not get to them tonight. But you can also save the chat. There was all sorts of information and links provided for you tonight, and contact information. You can save the chat. And how you save the chat is down where you've been typing in messages. on the same line as where it says to everyone, there are 3 dots off to the right-hand side. And 3 dots off to the right-hand side. And if you click on that, it gives the option of save chat. And so you can save your chat, and then it should say show in folder, and it should lead you to the folder where it is. We will have it if you have trouble getting it. So if you need it, you can contact Susie or I. We will have it, but go ahead and click on that.
Karen,
Click on that for yourself.
Someone's just asking if anyone knows where people can get devices, if they know where their people might be able to, get a computer for either a cheaper price or donated. If they could type that in the chat, we could include that in resources.
Susie, might TechSoup be a source?
Yeah, TechSoup is a source for software for sure.
Okay,
I don't know
software,
if they
yeah.
provide hardware as well, but I'll put a link to TechSoup, which is a company that provides discounted software to charities. So there's a little bit of a process that you have to register, and they verify that you are a charity. But I know they do have a Zoom package, but I don't know. I haven't looked for devices before.
And George, yes, one congregation can use one Zoom account. It's associated with one person's email or an email address with a password. So long as somebody has that email address and password available to them, then they can set up a Zoom meeting. So that's how we shared it when we first started as a staff.
I think it would be useful as we move towards the end of the call, Karen, if people could just put any evaluation comments in terms of this call, and also how you might want to meet in the future. Do you want to meet weekly as lay leaders? I think that'd be useful feedback for us as staff. So if you could type that in the chat box, that would be great. And maybe we can leave the chat box open a little bit after we end the call.
Yeah, so please do let us know whether or not you want to meet again. Evaluation, great too, but we do want to know whether or not you want to meet again so that we can set that up, and any topics you want to address, for sure. Great, thank you. So I've told you how to save chat. We've talked about staff time. People are going to continue to enter into chat. I will stay on the line until everybody is finished so that I make sure I save the final chat. And now I'd like to call upon David Leighton Brown, who is our president. David, can you unmute yourself and begin to speak? Then you'll pop up for us.
Yes, thank you very much, Karen, and thank you very much to everyone. Certainly the reaction on the chat box was extremely positive, and I share that reaction. Now let me close with a prayer. God within us and around us, at a time when we are responsibly practicing social isolation and social distancing, let us remember that you are not isolated or distant from us, and we must not be isolated and distant from each other. This crisis poses an enormous challenge to us as individuals and us as communities of faith, but it also opens opportunities. Some of those were the examples of a whole variety of online interactions that we might never have explored without this terrible impetus. But there are things that we will learn that will become valued, continued activities, even when things return to normal. Please help us to explore and embrace these opportunities, and to explore and embrace connection, which will be all the more important as we are physically distanced. I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, David. And wonderful to know you're here and support you and the executive and the work you're doing. And thank you to every one of you who are in the communities of faith I never quite know what our number is. I think it's 167, but I hear people talk about it as a little bit lower than that. But I see us all as this incredible connections of networks throughout this region, and that we are not alone. We are connected, and we will probably connect again on here. Staff's going to be available to you from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock each day. That you can pop into Zoom. You'll get that information soon. And we offer you our blessings and hold you all in prayer as you extend your prayers around the world. Thank you, everyone. Take care. You can undo your mutes if you want to and say goodnight to everyone. Oh, I guess I can unmute you. I think I have that. Here we go. Unmute all of you. Go ahead.
Good night,
everyone.
everyone.
Hey.
Bless.
Blessings all.
Good night, Peggy.
Good night, Maureen.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, John.
Good night, John.
Reverend Kim.
Sounds like a Walton.
Talk again.